Hi, Kirsty, back again. Yeah, today what I'd like to speak about is water and what its properties are and the importance that water has in the universal scheme of things. Uh, if we look at the properties of water and why I'm doing water will become apparent as we go further towards the end of this meeting. If you look at the properties of water, it has several properties that people are not consciously aware of. They're unconsciously aware of, but not consciously aware of. And for instance, water is very flexible, adaptable, and transparent. So when you put water flows down a river, it always spreads itself out and follows the form of the banks. So that tells you another property of water. Water is very adaptable, flexible, and it's able to change its form depending on where it is. And then water also is able to take on the properties of its surroundings. So, for instance, if you have water in a beaker and you add a dye to it, it changes the color of the water. So the dye dissolves in the water and the water changes its color. So it's extremely adaptable and it's able to dissolve matter. Then water, if you add different tastes to it, like if you add sugar to water, the sugar gets dissolved and the water takes on the properties of the sugar and it becomes sweeter. Transversely, if you add salt to water, it takes on the properties of salt and it becomes saltier. Then water also has mass. And what I mean by it, it has weight, gravitas, gravity. And it's also able to defy gravity, in that if you have a beaker of water and you look at the edges curl up slightly. So it's like the water's reaching upward. And this is called the meniscus of water. Then if you take 2 drops of water on 2 beakers and you drop a drop of water on each beaker and you bring them closer together, the water will try to create a bridge between the 2 beakers so the water droplets meet. And that is a very interesting property of water. So water is intelligent. It knows where it is, and it always seeks to resolve any separation between water and water. So it always looks for other forms of water. And if you look at how water moves on the earth, it moves from the high altitude areas and it follows the pathway down to the sea. And then it goes into the sea. The sun heats up the sea produces clouds, the clouds go into the interior drops water, and the water drops into the rivers, eventually makes its way to the rivers, and the rivers go down to sea. So it's recycling itself all the time. And then we are not consciously aware, but water is everywhere. Even in the desert, you find water. It's under the sands of the desert. If you dig deep enough, you will always find water. And there's enormous amount of underground water around the earth. In fact, I read an article, I don't know how accurate it is, but it says there's more water on earth than there is land mass. So there's more underground water than there is surface water. Now that's very important to to remember, because we are always told that the next big war is going to be a fight about water. And that I find that terribly amusing, because water's everywhere. How can there be a shortage of water? You know, it's just a shortage of delivering water to the people. And if the people who are responsible for delivering that water are told not to deliver the water, of course, there's going to be a shortage of water. And we had that recently in our city, Johannesburg, where the people went for days without water. And the reason wasn't the shortage of water. It was, we have electricity blackouts here. And of course, the water pumps have to switch on and off, and they make sure that reservoirs are full. But because of the electricity blackouts, they weren't able to fill the reservoirs. So the reservoirs empty, so they weren't able to deliver water to the people. And it's a very, you know, a fine system that to create that balance between water, you know, in the rivers and the delivery of water. So it's more the delivery of water that's going to be a shortage rather than the lack of water. And if you're self-sufficient, you will always find water. You know, if I dig in my yard, I have to dig 5 feet down and I come across water. It's everywhere. And then some of the amazing properties of water. Water is conductive. In other words, it conducts electricity. So if you put, you know, you've always seen the movies, they throw a famous James Bond movie, threw a radio into the water and that electrocuted someone in the bath. In lightning storms, lightning electrifies water. So if you're in the water and there's a lightning strike on the water, you will be electrocuted. So water is conductive and it's able to transfer energy from one point to another point. Another important thing about water is it's able to hold the weight of anything that is on it, as long as the water that is displaced by the object is less than the weight of the object. Okay, and that's how the shipping industry, that's how boats are created, because they create a kind of a U-shaped shape to them, so that it displaces less water, and the less water it displaces allows the weight of the ship to actually float on the water. Now, this was discovered by somebody by the name of Archimedes, an ancient scientist, and he came up with what is called the Archimedes principle. And that principle is that the weight, the specific gravity of anything can be measured by placing it in water and measuring the displacement of water. And if the displacement of the water weighs more than the object, then the object won't be able to float. And that's through that understanding of that principle, the ship industry was developed. Archimedes lived in the time of the Egyptian pharaohs. So it was a very important discovery at the time, because that's when ships grew. And the Vikings used this principle very well in their ship design and became very adept at floating their boats down rivers. And that's how they were able to get into the interior, because they built these large flat-bottomed boats that were far more stable in rivers, but there were the difference in specific gravity between seawater, saltwater, and freshwater didn't make that much difference. Most ships, if they are saltwater ships, will sink a little deeper in freshwater. So that's important to remember, because people often wonder how flying saucers work. Well, they work on the same principle. Now, how is that possible? Now, keeping in mind all those properties of water, water has different states. So the state of the water, I'm getting a notice my internet connection. Can you hear me okay?
Oh, yeah, it cut out, but it's back again. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The state of water when it's frozen is ice. And when you heat water up, it becomes liquid. And when you heat the liquid, the gas that's taken off the water forms cloud or steam, and that becomes a gas. So water is ice, liquid, and gas, and it's the same thing, water. Now, in science here, they don't understand the principle that creates this difference is the molecules of ice move very slowly. And when they heat it up, the molecules start vibrating a lot quicker. And this causes the form of liquid. And when that molecules vibrate a little quicker, they become gas. Now, when gas is heated up, it becomes plasma. So plasma is the fourth state of water. And when plasma is heated up, it becomes ether. So, and when ether is heated up, it becomes liquid light. And liquid light goes up into the fifth dimension, 15th dimension, and it becomes pure light and sound. So by taking the range of ice, water, gas, plasma, ether, liquid light, pure light, and sound, you can see that water has remarkable properties. And we are surrounded, in a sense, by water. And it's not the liquid water that we know here, it is ether. And the ether has the same properties as water. It's conductive, it has mass, it is able to carry weight just as water carries weight. It is very adaptable. It permeates through everything, and everywhere around us is ether. In our bodies, a large proportion of our bodies is made up of liquid, blood, and a large portion of blood is just the water that is absorbed, the corpuscles of the oils and substances in our body to form the substance we call blood. But it's all water-based. So we are, in effect, water-based beings. And as energy beings, we produce a lot of energy in our soul bodies. And we'll go into that in more detail later in other meetings. But just to understand that ether and our bodies are the same thing, water, and that we are able to connect to the ether and to the universe through this thing called water, ether. And understanding that this empty space around us is not really empty space. It is, in a sense, just water. And it's water that vibrates at a higher level, very high level. And this high vibrating substance of water at that level has the same properties of water, so it conducts water. Water is also very intelligent, and so is ether. Ether is able to adapt to its surroundings. It holds the memory of the thing that it is moving around. So if it's moving around your soul body, it will pick up your soul vibration, your unique soul vibration identity, and it will remember it. So nothing in the universe is unknown. It's all known through the ether. And when we want to connect with the energy and the ley lines around the planet, we do it through this process of emitting energy into the ether. And we do that in a certain way, which we'll go into more detail. And it's fascinating how that happens. But the universe is just a field of energy. And everything within it is just an expression of that energy. And it has a certain universal design and creation template on which everything works. And it works in the higher dimensions as well as the lower dimensions. The same principles exist. So in ether, beings from the 7th, 8th, and 9th dimensions are etheric beings. That means they are etheric, ether. And in the first 9 dimensions, those are the dimensions that are able to hold, are form-holding dimensions. And that material form has a certain specific form. When we go into the 10th, 11th, and 12th dimensions, that's the dimensions, or they sometimes call it the 4th density, where the density is liquid light. And liquid light is like globules of mercury. I don't know if you've seen those lava lamps, and in that form, that those expressions of energy, like that lava in a lava lamp, is very adaptive to its surroundings, can take on any forms. And that's where the shapeshifters come in. The beings, some of the beings that have come to our Earth are from the 11th, 10th, 11th, and 12th dimension. And they have that adaptive ability to change shape and form. And they can transfer that energy down into the lower dimensions. And they do that through the memory that they hold in their soul bodies, that remember, that has the memory of their soul evolutionary journey, where they moved their soul through many lifetimes and through many dimensions until they get to the 10th, 11th, and 12th dimension. And they are able to step down the vibration of their energy down into any form that they hold in their soul body. Say if they were once an animal, they could manifest here as an animal. If they were an insect, that could manifest here as an insect. So they have enormous power in the sense that they have this shape-shifting ability. So in grid work, what's important to remember in grid keeping is that we have to make a conscious effort to receive the energy from the universe and to transmit that energy into the Earth's gravity, Earth's ley line fields. And the Earth's ley line fields are very real. I don't know if you've been out with your dowsing rods and picked up how when they come across energy around us, they will move in specific ways. And you can actually pick up a lot of electromagnetic energy in the air around us. So ley lines are very, very real. And when I was doing grid work, I was doing it on a specific ley line. So I found the strongest energy portal ley line around me So I could move my energy through the portals, through the ley lines to the portals, so that that gets transmitted around the earth. And in a sense, that is the consciousness that the earth lacks now. The understanding of us being energy beings and being able to transmit our energy into the earth's fields. Now, that becomes very important to understand in the sense that we create our own reality through the energy we transmit through our soul bodies. And I'll just briefly tell you how that works. And we'll go into more detail later. The energy that the soul body emits is electromagnetic energy. The electric are our thoughts, and the magnetic are our emotions. So through the electromagnetic fields in our bodies, our brains actually have an energy field which is electric, and our hearts have an energy field which is magnetic. And this has been measured by scientists. So, but the magnetic energy of the heart is larger than the electric energy of the mind, of the brain. So one has to understand the different layers of reality, in the sense that we talk about electric, thought, and then light. Electric, thought, light. Magnetic, emotion, sound. So when you hear sounds, you're not just hearing a noise or something in your ear. You actually are feeding the vibration of magnetic fields. Now, the interesting thing about light and sound fields, when Marconi was doing his experiments with radio, he came across a problem in that he had a transmitter and a receiver, and the receiver was not receiving the messages from they were electric messages from the receiver, from the transmitter. And so he spoke to Nikola Tesla, and Tesla explained to him that you have to send out both a magnetic and an electric wave at the same time to connect, to carry that message, because magnetic waves, when they're in cohesion and they have coherence with an electric wave, the magnetic wave carries the light wave or the thought wave. And Marconi did that, and that's how he invented the radio. Now, in terms of grid keeping, it's important to understand that if your head is telling you something and your heart is telling you another thing, that is incoherence to the universe. Your heart and your head must be in the same space. And that's how we move our thought and emotional energies. The emotions carry the thought wave. And when our hearts and our hearts and our minds are in coherence with each other, then that becomes more effective. And we'll go more into that later in terms of what our thoughts are and what our hearts are. But that just gives you some idea of how energy is carried, and what carries energy in the universe. Basically, it's water. It's ether. It is the medium through which thoughts and emotions are carried through the universe. But we haven't been able to adapt that to ourselves as grid keepers, in being the receivers and transmitters of our thoughts and emotions, and being malleable and pliable and adaptable and flexible to adapt to that. So that's why paying attention to the internal sounds inside your brain and your heart are very important. And we'll go through that in more detail later. But having said all that, Bruce Lee, the famous Kung Fu fighter, once made a statement. He said this: in order to be cohesive, you must become like water. And that's, you know, when I read that statement after I'd woken up, because I hadn't read it before, I thought, that's so true. But we don't understand the properties of water, so we can't become like water. Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
end it
So
there.
you end it there. Yeah.
Yeah, but do you have any comments or questions you'd like to ask?
Yeah, it's fascinating actually because water is something I'm really interested in as well, and it's been really fascinated by the way it has memory and it can hold intelligence and it can be programmed, and so yeah, it's really interesting to take it that extra level to relate it to the ether.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I've read a lot about, like the work of people like Gerald Pollack, and he talks about the different phases of the water and the memory of water, which is really fun to kind of reconcile with the left brain. Like this, yeah, like it scientifically makes sense that water has these incredible properties. But there's still, there's still things that are intangible about water that from our 3D things that make it really magical. So yeah.
Yeah, water is terribly important to understanding what life is, because in a sense, our soul bodies are etheric bodies. So they, from the 7th, 8th, and 9th dimension. And we only experience dimensions 1, 2, and 3. But we have the consciousness to be able to experience dimensions 10, 11, 7, 8, and 9. But we just haven't learned how to adapt that so that we can break through the shields between each 3 dimension. There's a shield or a void of nothingness. So learning to penetrate through that nothingness, in a sense, you have to become like water, and where nothing exists. And you go through all the dimensional fields like that, and we do it through intention, and we'll go through that more. But what is the meaning of intention? Intention.
Mm-hmm.
When we are able to create that torque and resonance within us and intend it, we can blow it out into the etheric fields. Okay. And my contention that if this planet had 144,000 people who understood this principle and were being grid keepers, we would change the consciousness of the planet, because we would be creating an enormous amount of information and etheric energy that carries higher standards and values and attitudes that of mastery that get filtered into the universal energy fields and the energy fields around us and through the ley lines, and that will change consciousness. And the whole purpose of grid keeping is to align our energy fields with the Earth's energy fields. And we'll go into that in more detail later and how we do that.
Yeah, very cool. So that was that was the intention that triggered me to contact you. It was like I had this vision. It's like raising global consciousness through connection with Earth energy, and then the water was part of that as well. So that, yeah. Mm.
Yeah, when I started grid keeping in 2006, the world was a totally different place from what it is now. And I began to place intentions into the grid lines. And so many of the intentions that I made are now becoming fulfilled. And one of them was the exposure of the evil ones on this planet, and how corrupt the Earth systems really are. And that's
Here
been,
we are. Yeah.
and that's slowly being revealed, you know, and it's a very powerful tool, because when I did grid keeping, there were 144 of us around the planet who were doing the same work, and we'd all been trained to do it. I met some of them, but I found that most of the grid keepers were crazy like me.
Yeah.
You have to be able to think very alternatively and, you know, see things in a different way. Well, much love to you, and we'll meet on Monday again, and then next Thursday, if that's okay with you. Great. See you then. Much love. Bye-bye.